بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We start off by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and sending peace and blessings upon the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and his companions until the last day. So continuing on the Seerah, the life and times of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. In the last session we covered Fijar wars. So just as a recap, this was known as Harbul Fijar, sacrilegious war. And we mentioned the reason why this was called a sacrilegious war was because it was inappropriate and it was a violation of ethics, morals and the religion of the people at the time. So Islamically, when we use the word fujur or fijar, it means violation of the religion. And this war of Fijar had taken place during the sacred month of Dhul Qa'dah. And we mentioned that the reason this war started was because of competition between two businessmen. So a person by the name Barwad from the tribe of Quraysh, he wasn't happy that a member from the Hawazin tribe, Urwatul Wahal, was selling to his customers. So they got into a debate, an argument, and as a result of this argument it turned into physical fighting, and Barwad, he killed Urwatul Wahal in this fight. As a result of this, the two tribes of Hawazin and Quraysh, they started a bloody and fierce war for a period of 5 to 10 years, the scholars they mentioned in the books of Seerah. And the Prophet ﷺ, we mentioned that he was around 15 years old at this time, and his job was to collect the arrows of the tribe who were fighting the Quraysh. So whenever the arrows came in the vicinity or the closeness to the Quraysh, he used to go and pick them up and give them to his uncles. But we also learned a few very important points that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, his attitude before prophethood towards war, that he realized that this was an unjust war. And this is from the dignity of the Prophet ﷺ, that he never unjustly raised arms against anyone. Even when he became a messenger of Allah ﷺ, we talked about some of the battles, the various battles that took place and the reasoning behind them. The scholars, they mention that the majority of the battles were defenseless battles. And even if you remember from last week, I mentioned that some of the battles were offensive battles, but this can also be an offensive attack, can be a defensive mechanism in the battlefield. And we mentioned, I gave an example, if somebody attacks you in the street, you can take cover, but also you can fight back in self-defense. And this is a form of self-defense. So today I want to talk a little bit about Hilf al-Fudul, or it's also known as Hilf al-Mutayyibin, and in English we called it a pact or a treaty. So the Prophet ﷺ, now the books of Seerah, they mention that he was approximately 20 years old. And just to give you some context and background, as a result of the Fijar wars, many people, they lost their lives in these battles, much blood was shed, and as a result there was a feeling of hostility, and this further sharpened the behavior of the Arabs, meaning that they were at every moment in their life, some of the smallest things they used to pick on and make them into huge mountains. So somebody might be talking to somebody and this may blow up into a big argument. So they were just looking for excuses to blow things out of proportion. And a result of this resulted in killings and tribes fighting each other. So there was no sense of security in terms of life, property, dignity for those who came from outside of Mecca. Anyone could take a foreigner's property. We mentioned several weeks ago that your defense or your unity in society, where you had to be part of a tribe which was strong, well known, and then this would be your defense mechanism in society. So if somebody picks on you and you have a strong tribe, a strong presence of people behind you supporting you, this was insurance policy for you. So the weak in society were helpless, and they were being subjugated to all kinds of persecution, and they didn't have the courage to show defiance. Now, this pact, this treaty of Hilf al-Fudul, it took place in Dhul Qa'dah, and this was one of the sacred months. So the story goes that a man from the tribe of Zubayd is a tribe in Yemen. He came for the pilgrimage to Mecca, and he sold a number of items to a person of the Quraysh known by Al-As ibn Wa'il. So this person comes from Yemen, the tribe of Zubayd. He comes into Mecca, and because it was a long journey, imagine in those days traveling from Yemen into Mecca, it was a long journey, and Mecca was the center of trade and commerce. So many people, when they used to come for the Hajj, they also used to come and they used to sell products and services that they had at this time. So this person, he comes from Yemen, he has two intentions. One is for him to sell his products, and two is to fulfill the rites of Hajj. So he comes in and he sells some products to this person of Quraysh, Al-As bin Wa'il. And Al-As bin Wa'il, he is a person who is a chieftain, he's a rich businessman, he's well known in the community. So he says to this person from this Zubayd tribe, he says, can I take your products on credit, and I will pay you at a later date. So the man, he agrees. So they've made a contract now, right? And Al-As bin Wa'il, he takes the products and he said, I'll pay you at a later date. Now what happens is, each day the person is going to ask Al-As bin Wa'il about the money for the products. He keeps putting off the date. So now this man, he realizes that this person is not going to pay me, and he's been wronged. Now who does he have in terms of community support in his society? In this society, he's outside of his land, he's in foreign lands, so he doesn't have any support from his community, he doesn't have any support from his tribe. So he went to the neighboring tribes of the Quraysh, and he tried to ask for supporters. But because these tribes of the Quraysh, they knew Al-As bin Wa'il, they knew his caliber in society, he was a businessman, and they realized that if we take the side of this person who is a foreigner and he's coming into this society, it's not going to look very good on us. But just as a side point, right? So we see that Al-As bin Wa'il, what did he do? He came into a contract and he took a debt from this person. So he said, I'll take these products and I will pay you at a later date. So now he is in debt, and the person from Yemen is the creditor. So what does our Sharia, Islam, even say in terms of debts and how to handle and manage and come into a contract of debt? There's many ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ in which he warns us to be diligent if we are entering into a contract which involves debt. In one hadith narrated by Aisha radiallahu anha, the Prophet ﷺ said, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-ma'thami wal-maghram. Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-ma'thami wal-maghram. Oh Allah, I seek refuge in you from sin and from heavy debt. When Aisha radiallahu anha, she hears this, she says, O Prophet of Allah, you often seek refuge from heavy debt. So she's seeking an answer from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he responded by saying, when a man gets into debt, he speaks and tells lies, and he makes a promise and he breaks it. So this hadith is mentioned in Bukhari and Muslim, and it's such a clear hadith. In this day and age, how many times have people lent money to other people? And when a person is debt, we realize the situation that person is in. They don't care about the promises, the oaths, the false promises that they make you. All they are concerned is about the money and how to get that money. Once they have that money, they may have some illness, they may have a likeness to that money and spend it quickly. But when a person is usually always in debt, they always have this thought on their mind, that how am I going to get the money? And usually we see many people today in society, they take stuff on credit, money on a credit card. We take out loans to buy cars, we buy houses on mortgages, And the scholars, they've said that there are certain conditions for when we can enter into debt. And usually these conditions are three. These are that the borrower, when the borrower borrows money, he should be determined to pay this money off. So this is one of the qualities that you need to have as a borrower. Right? When you get into a contract where you are lending money, you need to have an intention to pay that money off. Many people, even Muslims, they take money out on credit cards, interest-free credit for a period of 12 months. And what happens is that the period of interest-free finishes. And then they start paying interest. Because they just thought about this great offer. I don't need to worry about this for a period of 12 months. But when the 12 months goes by, they haven't planned how they are going to pay this money off, and then they get into huge problems. They start transferring balances from one card to a different card, and they get into all sorts of problems. So firstly, the scholars, they say that the borrower should be determined to pay. And the person who's also lending, who's giving out the money, should at least do some due diligence, do some research. That this person, yes, he's a Muslim, I should trust him and take his word for it, but is he likely to pay me off? So you should ask the person, what kind of a job are you in? How do you intend to pay me off? So you can also, from a Sharia standpoint, understand if your money is likely to be paid off or not before you make the decision to give out the money. And then it should be for something which is permissible in the eyes of the Sharia. So unfortunately, in today's day and age, everything has become a necessity, right? All materialistic objects today have become a necessity. We need to buy our iPads, our phones, our tablets, our TVs. Everything we need to buy on credit. And the principle here is quite simple, right? Do not buy with money that you don't have. Because we're borrowing money from the bank to buy things, and sometimes to please other people as well. I've got the latest gadgets. I've got a level of respect in the society. I need to make sure that I'm trending with the people. When you go on Facebook and Twitter, they have all of these things that are latest videos that are trending. Which is the latest phone? Which are the latest gadgets? So many hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, on one occasion the Prophet ﷺ, he refrained from offering the funeral prayer for a person who passed away because he owed 2 dinars. Right? Until Abu Qatada came and he promised the Prophet ﷺ to pay it off for him. So when he saw the Prophet ﷺ the following day, he said, I have paid it off. And the Prophet ﷺ responded by saying, now his skin has become cool for him. Meaning that as a result of this debt on his shoulders, he had passed away. But he was having the punishment in the grave. But now his skin has become cool for him. So this hadith indicates how difficult the issue of debt is, and that it should not be undertaken in cases of extreme necessity. Another hadith, actually Imam al-Qurtubi, he says, our scholars said that it is a disgrace, a humiliation, because it preoccupies the mind, right? So when a person is in debt, they're always worried about how they're going to pay off the debts. Makes one worried about paying it off, and makes one feel humiliated in front of the lender when meeting him or her. So we know when we've borrowed somebody from a person and we've given them a date, sometimes we feel ashamed, right, to even show our faces in the society or in the community or in front of that person, because we've lent that money from that person. And it's like a cloud standing over your shoulder until you've paid off that debt. And then he continues by saying, and feeling that he is doing one a favor when accepting a delay in the payment. Perhaps the person who borrows, he may promise himself that he will pay it off and then break the promise, or speak to the lender and lie to him, or swear an oath to him and then break it, and so on. Moreover, this person who has borrowed the money, he may die before he has paid off the debt. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said in a hadith, the soul of the believer is held hostage by his debt in his grave until it is paid off. So this is how severe a debt is in the life of a believer. That you are a prisoner to this debt until it is paid off. Ali radiallahu anh, he mentions that a mukatib, a slave who entered into a contract of manumission. So a contract of manumission is if you have an owner and you're a slave, and you strike a deal with your master that I'm going to pay you off. So he came to Ali radiallahu anh, and he said, "Oh Ali, I'm struggling to pay off this debt, to pay off my master." And Ali radiallahu anh said, "Shall I teach you some words in which the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught me? And if you have a debt like the mountain of Seerah, Allah will pay it off for you." So obviously this person, he says, "Yes, tell me." And then he said, "Allahumma akfini bihalalika an haramik wa aghnini bifadlika amman siwak." "Oh Allah, suffice me with what you have permitted, so that I have no need of that which you have forbidden, and make me independent of means by your bounty, so that I have no need of anyone besides you." So these are some of the du'as that we can pray. In another hadith, the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he came to a man of the Ansar, whose name was Abu Usama, and he saw him in the masjid when it was not the salah time. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said to him, "What brings you into the masjid when it is not the time of salah?" And he said, "Worries of money and debts." So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "Shall I not teach you some words, if which you say them, Allah will take away your worries and pay off your debt?" And he said, "Oh yes, O Messenger of Allah." And then the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he recited the dua, "Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-hammi wal-huzni wal-ajazi wal-kasali wal-bukhni wal-jubni wa dhala'i ad-dayni wa ghalabati ar-rijal." Oh Allah, I take refuge in you from anxiety and sorrowness, weakness and laziness, miserliness and cowardice, the burden of debts and being overpowered by men. So this dua and the dua I mentioned just now, these can be found in Hisnul Muslim. Many of us have iPhones and Samsung phones. You can download this app, Hisnul Muslim, and you just search for debts, and inshallah you'll find this dua. This dua can also be read in times of worry, in times of anxiety. If you're worried about being overpowered by men, sometimes in the workplace we have a situation where we're being overpowered by our managers, our peers, and we don't want to face a meeting, or we don't want to face the reality at this time. Inshallah, if you read this dua, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will save you from being overpowered by men. So coming back to the story, just to summarize, so this person was from the tribe of Zubayd. He came into Mecca for the Hajj as a merchant also, and he gave some of his products away to Al-As bin Wa'il. And Al-As bin Wa'il, we mentioned, he was a chieftain, a politician, a rich businessman, and he was a well-known person in the society. But on this occasion, he did not have any intention on paying for the goods. So now this person, he goes out to the people of the tribes of Quraysh. They don't listen to him. They don't give him a listening. So what he does now is he decides to make this problem a public problem. Now in those days there was no Facebook, there was no Twitter. So how do you make this a public problem? Now what they used to do is they used to write a poem, and we mentioned that the Kaaba was a social place. The Quraysh, they used to gather there in the mornings and after the time of Asr. So this person, he writes a poem, and then he goes and announces this poem in front of the Kaaba, in front of the people. And this is like the news media, right? It's like Twitter in this today's day and age. So he goes out and he gets the instant attention of the people, and he says to the people, "O tribe of Fihl, O tribe of Quraysh, I have been unjustly treated because of my merchandise. I am in the valley of Mecca, far away from my people, far away from my support. I am still in the ihram," right? So he's telling them that I'm still in the state of ihram. "My hair has not been combed," right? You're not allowed to comb your hair, meaning he's disheveled, right? My hair has not been combed. I'm still in the state of ihram. Where are my men to help me? Between the Hijr and the Hajar. So here he's making reference to the Maqam of Ibrahim and Al-Hajr al-Aswad. The true haram belongs to those who are honorable, meaning he's trying to call upon the good qualities of the people of the Quraysh. That you are the people of the Quraysh. You are responsible for protecting the haram. You have good qualities. There is no sanctity for the one who wears a thobe and cheats and steals. So now this news, it spreads like wildfire amongst the Quraysh. And Zubayd ibn Abdul Muttalib, he was a prophet he was the uncle of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he heard about this and he said, "We can't let this go by. right? We now need to hold a meeting. So he gathered all of these senior members of the Quraysh in the house of a very famous person, is Abdullah ibn Judan, right? He was a distant relative of Aisha radiallahu anha, and his name frequently comes up in the seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he was one of the noble people of Mecca at this time. He was a problem solver. Sometimes we have disputes, we have arguments, and we go to people in our society who we trust, who we can know, who will listen to our problems, and they will come and solve our problems for us. So they went to his house and they signed a treaty or a pact. And this some of the conditions in this treaty were that no person will be subjected to persecution, regardless of whether they are from Mecca or whether they are out of Mecca, regardless of their color, regardless of their background. There's no racism here, right? If you are being persecuted, these people will come and they will stand up for your rights. There were some other conditions that from now on there will be no opportunities for cruelty to occur. An oppressor's cruelty will not be overlooked, and there will be no further opportunities for oppression to be inflicted. We will push for the rights of the downtrodden until they are obtained. So this was sending out a clear message to the people who are oppressors in the society, that now you need to stop your oppressment of the people. So how did they sign this treaty? There were no documents in those days. What they did was they went out in public in front of the Kaaba and they made an announcement. And the way they used to sign is they used to dip their hands in perfume, and then they used to place their hands over the Kaaba. So all of the people who were part of the treaty, the pact, they used to dip their hands in perfume and put the hand on the Kaaba in the same place. And this was known as the signing of the treaty of Hilf al-Mutayyibin, the treaty of the people who have perfumed themselves. And the scholars, they mentioned that it's also mentioned Hilf al-Fudul, because Hilf means oath and Fudul means people with virtue. But also there's another reason. When As bin Wa'il, he found out that these people were getting involved in his matters, in his affairs, he said, why are you getting involved in matters of Amrun Fuduli, right? Matters which are no business of yours. So the people, they call this Hilf al-Fudul, because they said it is actually our business, because you are oppressing other people in the community. And the Prophet ﷺ, many years later, after he became a prophet, he said, certainly I had witnessed a pact of justice in the house of Abdullah ibn Judan that was more beloved to me than a herd of red camels. And every time we reference red camels in the seerah, we relate them to the Lamborghinis, the Porsches, the Bugatti Veyrons of this time. So the Prophet ﷺ said, even if you were to give me a herd of red camels, I would not exchange my time in this signing of the pact. And even if I were called to it now in Islam, I would respond. So in conclusion, let's go through a few of the lessons from Hilf al-Fudul. The Prophet ﷺ realized, brothers and sisters listening online and here, that the Messenger ﷺ, he was actively involved with his society of his time, right? Even though the society, they were not Muslim. This is very important, because many of us as Muslims, we think that we only need to get involved in Muslim matters. No, as a Muslim, it is a responsibility upon you that you stand up for justice, you stand up for truth, you stand up for the oppressed, you get involved in the public matters where you can be a good Muslim and represent Islam. There are many matters in society where people are falling over, matters of humanity, right? People are being sexually abused, there's racism in society, there's domestic violence in society, people are taking overdose on drugs. All of these matters, we can get involved in preventing these matters in a positive way. And a very famous hadith in which Anas bin Malik reported the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, help your brother whether he is an oppressor or he is being oppressed. So the Sahaba, they responded by saying, oh Messenger of Allah, we can help the person who's being oppressed, right? We can probably take him away from the oppressor. But how do we help the oppressor? And the Prophet ﷺ said, you help the oppressor by seizing his hand. Meaning stop him from committing more injustice, more oppression in society. Prevent him from doing this. This is how you support him. So, and this is a form of da'wah in our society, that we get involved in such issues. the Prophet ﷺ, we see here that he is solving the problems of his community, and when he becomes a prophet many years later, he becomes a person who is loved, who is cherished, who is respected, and who is accepted in society. So this clearly demonstrates the qualities of the Prophet ﷺ as a young man. He was invited to be part of this pact, the senior members of the Quraysh. So this shows that as a young man, the Prophet ﷺ, he had great qualities of leadership. And he was the youngest. The books of Seerah, they mention that he was the youngest participant in this house of Judan. Now, even though it was a time of Jahiliyyah, we realize that there was also an element of virtue in the people during this time, and this made it easy for them when Islam came, for them to accept Islam. So this, inshallah, brings us to the end of our lesson today. Inshallah, next week we will talk a little bit about the marriage of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to Khadija radiyallahu anha. Subhanallahumma wa bihamdika, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.
Just X. Is it? Go back. Is it there? No. Should we want to stop streaming? Yes.
Yeah.
End.